Seraphis 9 was dying. The air reeked of decay, a cloying mixture of ammonia and rot. Bodies lay where they had fallen, their silvered Zolari flesh bruised black with hemorrhagic ruptures. The plague moved too fast, hours from first cough to complete organ failure. I had watched my colleagues, my friends, collapse mid-sentence, their veins bursting like overripe fruit. And now I stood alone, encased in my pressurized biosuit, staring at the impossible. A human. She knelt beside the writhing form of a dying Zolari, bare-skinned, utterly unprotected. The red veil virus floated in the air like invisible death, yet she showed no fear. Her fingers, covered in another being's infected blood, worked methodically, clearing the mucus from his breathing slits, injecting some kind of primitive stabilizer. No quarantine. No shielding. No dying. I activated my external speaker. Get back. You'll be infected. She barely glanced up, green eyes calm beneath the smudges of sweat and dirt. Infected? She gave a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, no. This thing isn't doing anything to us. I felt my throat tighten. That was not possible. Her name was Sergeant Elaine Carter, one of the human engineers assigned to the outer perimeter. She and her team of 12 had been running maintenance when the outbreak began. That was 3 days ago. 3 days in direct exposure. By all logic, they should have been dead before sunrise. Instead, they were walking through the carnage like ghosts. I stared at her, then at the lifeless body of my assistant, Vekith, who had collapsed only hours before. His blood was still wet, staining the cracked metal floor. He had been wearing full protection. She had not. How? My voice wavered. You should be dead. Carter's lips twitched. Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot. Behind her, another human, a male, broad-shouldered and chewing on something, spoke between bites. It's just a virus, man. We've seen worse. He gestured around at the ruined colony. Hell, this is bad, but it's not that bad. My stomach churned. Not that bad? My people were dying in droves. Other species across the Federation had been wiped out by Red Veil before it reached us. No cure. No survivors. And yet here they stood. Carter exhaled, rubbing her forehead. Look, I don't know the details, but our immune system is different, tough. We've been fighting stuff like this on Earth for millennia. If we died this easy, we wouldn't be here. Millennia? My mind struggled to comprehend the sheer scale of what she was implying. Humanity had survived plagues like Red Veil many times over. Not through advanced medicine, not through quarantine, but through their own bodies. My hands trembled as I stepped forward, my biosuit hissing with each motion. We need to study this, I whispered. We need to understand. Carter crossed her arms, brow furrowing. Yeah? Well, get in line. She pointed to the bodies around us. Because if you don't figure it out soon, you won't have anyone left to study. I stood in the sterile laboratory, watching the impossible unfold beneath the microscope. The Red Veil pathogen was a nightmare, its structure an intricate death machine, designed to breach cells, replicate explosively, and leave its host a liquefied husk. Every species that had encountered it perished in days. No immune system had ever resisted it. Until now. Beneath the lens, human blood cells ripped the pathogen apart. It was not a slow, passive resistance. It was a war. The white cells swarmed like predators, overwhelming the virus, digesting it, annihilating it at a speed I could scarcely comprehend. The humans had called it their immune system, but it was more than that. It was a weapon. You should see what this stuff does to malaria, Carter said beside me, arms crossed. That one's been trying to kill us for thousands of years. I turned, struggling to contain my awe. You faced plagues like this before? Carter let out a dry chuckle. Oh yeah. You think Red Veil is bad? You ever hear of smallpox? Killed hundreds of millions. The Black Death wiped out a third of Europe. Ebola makes you bleed from your eyes. She gave a small shrug. We figured out vaccines eventually, but before that? If we didn't have an immune system like this, we wouldn't have made it past the caves. My secondary heart stuttered. Hundreds of millions. The number felt too large, too surreal. My people had never faced a threat like that. No species had. And you, adapted? My voice was barely a whisper. Your body's evolved under such constant attack? Carter glanced at me, something unreadable in her expression. Yeah. That's what we do. I turned back to the microscope, staring at the carnage in the petri dish. I had always believed the Zolari were an advanced species. We had conquered the stars, built great cities that floated above gas giants, unlocked the mysteries of dark matter. But here, in this tiny droplet of blood, was something more ancient, more powerful than all of our knowledge. A force shaped not by intelligence, but by relentless, unyielding survival. And for the first time in my life, I felt afraid. Desperation made beings do the unthinkable. The Federation had already prepared for our extinction. The quarantine of Seraphis 9 was absolute, no ships in, no ships out. The other species had accepted our fate, much as they had for the others before us. The Zolari, once proud, would become just another footnote in Red Veil's merciless campaign across the stars. Unless we broke the rules. I stood in the human medical bay, surrounded by crude, inelegant equipment. The Federation would call what we were attempting barbaric, unethical, unnatural. But there were no alternatives left. Carter sat across from me, rolling up her sleeve. Bone marrow transplant, she said, as if discussing routine maintenance on a starship. We do it all the time back home. Your immune system is garbage, so we give you mine. I stared at her arm. Her skin was marked with faint scars, healed wounds, evidence of a species that had been hurt over and over again, yet survived each time. This has never been attempted between species, I said carefully. Our physiologies. Carter snorted. Your physiology sucks. That's the problem. She tapped her forearm. You said the splicing failed. Too different. But this? Your body won't have a choice. Once the new immune system takes root, you'll start making human white blood cells. The idea was monstrous. A fundamental violation of the natural order. No Zolari had ever been altered like this. I would no longer be entirely my own species. And yet, when I thought of the bodies piling in the streets, of my friends gasping for breath as Red Veil hollowed them from the inside, I knew there was no decision to make. I extended my arm. Do it. The procedure was excruciating. I felt my body reject it, resist it, fight against the alien marrow being infused into my bones. My temperature soared, my veins burned, and my vision swam with fevered delirium. And then, something changed. A war began inside me. A battle beyond my comprehension. And for the first time in Zolari history, the Red Veil virus had found an opponent it could not defeat. Pain was my world. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body caught in a battle I couldn't fight, only endure. My limbs burned. My veins felt like rivers of molten fire. My secondary heart stuttered, struggling to keep up with the feral invaders rampaging through my bloodstream. Human cells. I had thought them simple, organic constructs, passive, like my own. But I had been wrong. They were alive in a way I had never understood. They did not just exist, they hunted. They fought. They destroyed. And they were winning. When I awoke fully, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No alarms. No automated med drones hovering above me with their sterile, hopeless reports. No distant wails of the dying. Only the quiet hum of the medical base systems. I exhaled, and felt something I had never experienced before. Strength. I sat up, my movements fluid, my mind clear. My body felt efficient, sharper. As if something sluggish had been burned away, replaced with something fierce, aggressive, unyielding. Carter stood beside me, arms crossed, an unreadable expression on her face. Welcome back, champ. I swallowed, testing my voice. The virus? She smirked. Gone. You fought it off. The weight of those words crushed me. No Zolari had ever recovered from Red Veil. Until now, until me. I raised my arm, studying my own skin. It looked the same. But beneath the surface, I knew I was different. Human white cells now patrolled my body, a new immune system forged from another species. I was Zolari. I was something else. Carter tilted her head. How do you feel? I looked at her, realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. Powerful. I walked through the streets of Seraphis 9, my boots splashing through puddles of stagnant water. The air still smelled of death, but it no longer carried the stench of imminent extinction. The virus was gone. Not eradicated, no. Red Veil still lingered in the air, clinging to surfaces, waiting for another host. But it would find none. The first successful immune graft had been mine, But I would not be the last. More Zalari had undergone the procedure, and every single one had survived. Their bodies, once helpless against the pathogen, now fought back with a borrowed ferocity. It should have been a victory. But the Federation did not see it that way. I stood before the emergency council, their holograms flickering in the dim light. The representatives of dozens of species stared at me with expressions ranging from awe to horror. This is unnatural, hissed a Zorvani delegate, his spiny crest rising in distress. You have altered yourself with foreign biology. You are no longer truly Zalari. I clenched my fists. I am alive. A Valak envoy leaned forward, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with unease. And what happens next? If this spreads beyond your people, if others begin altering themselves with human biology, they will survive. My voice was steel. As we did. That is not the point, another counselor snapped. Humanity is already dangerous. Their military is formidable, their resilience unmatched. And now we learn that even their blood is a weapon. How long before someone finds a way to exploit this? Carter had warned me this would happen. She had seen it before, how the galaxy reacted when something challenged the balance of power. I could not blame them for their fear. Because I understood it. I understood it when I watched human blood obliterate Red Veil under a microscope. I understood it when I felt my body reshape itself into something stronger. The Federation had always believed that technology was the key to survival. That knowledge and advancement would protect us. But humanity had never relied on those things alone. They had survived their own planet, a world that had tried, over and over, to kill them. And they had emerged unchallenged. Now, their biology was spreading. I met the gazes of the assembled leaders. You fear humanity because you cannot control them. But the truth is, you never could. Silence. Carter stepped beside me, hands in her pockets, watching them all with the quiet confidence of a species that had already conquered the deadliest enemy in the universe, nature itself. She leaned toward me, voice low. You know they'll never look at us the same way again, right? I exhaled, feeling my new immune system pulse with every beat of my heart. I was living proof that the galaxy had changed. I looked at Carter and gave a small, knowing smile. No, I said. They never will.